Greetings, family. Sister Shanice in the house here, reporting on some really important news that we consider we have to address. For those of you who are not familiar with this channel, it's an independent news channel that centers on an Afrocentric perspective on issues that are impacting on us as Africans at home and abroad. I do interviews. I get the privilege of interviewing some of the most prolific members of our community, and we engage on a whole range of issues that is going to lead towards our collective advancement. I do live shows on YouTube every Wednesday evening from 8 p.m. GMT time, 3 p.m. EST time. And today we're going to be discussing the proposal by President Akufo-Addo of Ghana, who is calling on the US for them to become involved and to assist him with what he says are the concerns of dealing with terrorists on his border with Burkina Faso. The claim is that Burkina Faso is using Russian mercenaries, in particular the Wagner group, to fight terrorism on its border. Obviously, you know, the call to any foreign country to come in with an army to get involved in war activities, albeit supposedly to be protecting your interests, has major implications for the civilians, major implications for the whole of the region, and major long-term consequences indeed. So some feel that this is a knee-jerk reaction by the president because, you know, has he consulted the AU? Had he consulted, you know, had he consulted his own neighbors at a diplomatic level in Burkina Faso? Had he exhausted all negotiations before resorting to this action? Very concerning indeed. Seems to, you know, be ignoring or undermining his own African countries in making this step. So we're all obviously very, very concerned of anything whatsoever that might look like, you know, wars potentially breaking out on in one's country or on their border. So to discuss this really important topic today, I have the privilege of being able to bring to you our brother Kwame Osei, who is an African historian, writer, podcaster, social commentator, who has over 15 years experience covering African issues at home and abroad. He's written numerous articles for the Ghanaian journals, Daily Guide, The Graphic, Public Agenda, BBC, and Black Britain. We are delighted to be able to have Kwame Osei comment on this really important topic for us today. Welcome, Mr. Kwame Osei. Thank you so much for joining us on the Sister Shanice show today. This is obviously a matter that you as a Ghanaian and an African is very concerned with. Obviously has major national security implications for the whole of the South African region. You know, what is your take on this move by the president of Ghana to be seemingly calling on the US to get involved in mercenary terrorist activities on its border?
Thank you, Sister Shanice, and thank you for the invitation. Regards to a question, it's a very important question that you've asked. I'm not surprised that the current government of Ghana has asked for military assistance because it has, in essence, aligned itself with America. So, for example, this current government has signed a contract which has a prolonged contract, you know, that was started, you know, in the Rawlings era in the early 90s, and that's continued to today, whereby governments of Ghana have signed military agreements with America. This current government is, notwithstanding, signed the agreement with America to use Ghana as some kind of military base for American army personnel. And we know that, you know, even there's a camp outside Tamako Michel camp where we know US military personnel are training Ghanaian military personnel. So in essence, the military has already started because of this memorandum of understanding that was signed between the two countries as recently as 2021.
So some war correspondents are saying that this move by Ghana is actually declaring their position in the Russia-Ukraine war as well, and that they are aligning themselves with the US. From what you've said, there is a memorandum of understanding that goes some way towards doing this already anyway. But in light of the war situation with Ukraine, what are the implications? And also, in light of the history of Cold Wars on the continent of Africa, could this be a move that is going back in time, where we see foreign armies fighting their wars on the continent of Africa itself?
Well, in terms of that regard, I don't think the West and the East have ever left the continent, because many of us believe that, because of so-called independence, that these Western countries left the continent, but they didn't, because I'll give you two examples. So the French never left Africa. So they've always had a military base in Senegal, had a military base in Mali, and had a military base in Cameroon. They never left the continent. And also Britain has had long established a military base in Kenya, near Mount Zion. So, the colonialist powers have never ceased to start their sort of strategic military aims on the continent. And what we see today is a further expansionism into the continent, because let's not forget, for listeners as well, that all the main powers, so we're talking about the US, the UK, Russia itself, Turkey, Germany, France, they all have military bases on the continent, because the final frontier is Africa. And the reason for this is that Africa is home to at least 75% of the world's resources that all these Western countries, added to that China, India as well, need for their industrial survival. So this survival, there's no mighty, you could say, a modern day scramble for Africa, with all these Western and Eastern powers, so-called, establishing military bases in Africa. And for me, as a Ghanaian, as an African, I think it's a very, very dangerous precedent, because we as Africans are caught in the middle of this geo-economic and political warfare between the East on one side and the West on one side. And this is why one of our great African leaders, Dr. Asafa Kwame Nkrumah of blessed memory, he said that we are not aligned. We are not facing East, we are not facing West. We want to face to inwards, i.e. Africa. And he made it Ghana's policy not to align themselves with either East or West. So it's quite unfortunate that current governments, particularly in the Fourth Republic, including this one, have somehow had their foreign policy align themselves to the West, namely America. And for me, it's a very, very dangerous precedent.
It certainly is indeed. And there may well be some of our listeners who are not familiar with the Wagner Group and who they are. And, they're being described as a shadowy Russian mercenary organization, which has activities happening across the world. They've been described as a private military company, a network of mercenaries, de facto private army of the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. They're involved, it's saying here, in the Ukraine war as well, where many have been killed. There has been extensive coverage of this Wagner Group, and they have been, being repeatedly described as being a shadowy, illegal type of group. They've got activities at the moment, it's said, in Ukraine, in Syria, in Libya, Central African Republic, Mali, obviously Burkina Faso that we're talking about, and elsewhere. So, it's very concerning indeed that this sort of military buildup is actually happening on the continent, and that any African government should be inviting in these type of shadowy outfits. Also, coupled with that, there's mention here, when you do a little bit of read up, that they're not only do they accept payment for their so-called mercenary services in cash, but also in kind, which goes back to what you were saying about the scramble for Africa continuing, obviously, under a different guise here, because they do take payment in precious minerals and metals as well. So, very concerning indeed. I mean, one of the things that jumps out, I think, for most of us as Africans is, this decision by the Ghanaian government not to seek internal negotiations with their neighbors, first of all, not to exhaust, internal negotiations, not to approach the AU, not to approach, the West African bodies and institutions that are there to resolve any internal conflicts, but to go to America, notwithstanding the so-called memorandum of agreement. You would expect that there would be some protocol in place, whereby African leaders speak to each other about problems that they've got on their borders before involving foreign armies. Would you not?
Well, indeed, because even under the ECOWAS protocol, and the ECOWAS protocol, for those listeners, the Economic Community of West African States, that was formed in 1975. So under that protocol, member states, have the duty to consult with one another where there's conflict, and how to resolve conflict resolutions. And so you would have thought that under the ECOWAS protocol, that the Ghanaian president would have sought to speak to his Burkina and Malian counterparts in regards to this security issue. But it just tells you, I mean, for one, the president of Ghana doesn't recognize the military relationships in both Mali and Burkina. And I remember when he was chair of the AU, which was not that long ago, about a year or so ago, he actually, said that he doesn't recognize the government of Mali because of, the military rulership that overthrew the president there. So with that regard, it doesn't surprise me that he's gone unilateral to go over the ECOWAS body and to go straight to America. And this fits in with what I said earlier, because it all ties in with the memorandum of understanding that he signed with the American government about a year and a half ago, to increase America's military involvement with Ghana. And, and to sort of even sort of go extend on that, you see, this is what Assad's Kwame Nkrumah warned about when he first conceived of the idea of the African High Command, because he understood that there'll be a time that we are in now whereby foreign armies, or many of the armies of the imperialists, i.e. the West and the East, they will come to Africa and wage war for their own geopolitical and military and economic interests. So this is what Assad thought, as early as 1960, knew to the idea of the African High Command, because the reason why he did that, because at the time, he was dissatisfied in which the way that the UN was involved in Congo. So this is why Nkrumah sent Ghanaian forces to actually Congo to protect Lumumba, because he was aware that the UN did not really have the security interests of Africa at heart. And this is why, at the time, he mooted the idea of the African High Command that would serve to give Africa security, because of these mercenaries who were swimming about the place, and also because of the lack of confidence that Nkrumah had with bodies like the UN, who were there for their own interests and not necessarily for Africans' interests.
Absolutely. And, what's also very worrying to all of us as Africans is that they've made the call to the US, a country that has, by its own track record, no respect or regard for their own Africans in America. So if they abuse and mistreat their own fellow Africans in America, why on earth would Africans on the continent think that they would come to the continent to save them if they're not able to give a fairness and justice to their own people in America? Is there no regard for the history of these people amongst African leaders?
Well, apparently it seems not, because, and let me give you an insight, one of the insights into this memorandum of understanding that Ghana signed with America. And this probably explains why our government is, wants to closure with America. So in this memorandum of understanding, if a US soldier let's say, for example, they dehumanized an African in Ghana on the ground, that US soldier will not face trial in the Ghanaian court. That US soldier will actually go back to America and face trial in an American court, showing you that the lack of respect that we have for ourselves and then what they have for us, meaning that if any soldier, US soldier, committed a crime, some kind of heinous crime in Ghana, they would in essence get away with it under this memorandum of understanding and not face trial in Ghana where the incident happened. So that shows you the regard that some of our leaders have for us, and this is why it's very easier for the neo-colonialists or the imperialists to, you could say, manipulate African leaders.
It's very concerning indeed, extremely concerning. And, you know, we've seen, you know, human rights abuses in Haiti, for example, when the American soldiers were there. I mean, there were countless complaints that were being made, accusations of cholera in the water, which was proven. So this is a major, major concern at a national security level, at a health level, you know, and for all Ghanaian citizens and for the citizens of those in the whole entire region. Kwame Osei, we want to thank you so much for joining us for our look today at the call made by the President of Ghana to the US. Thanks for sharing the concerns that you have. I've received lots of messages from my viewers who are also very concerned about this move. So I'm going to be closing out with the video from our President of Ghana. Thank you so much, Kwame Osei.
Today, Russian mercenaries are on our northern border. Burkina Faso has now entered into an arrangement to go along with Mali in employing the Wagner forces there. I believe a mine in southern Burkina has been allocated to them as a form of payment for their services. Prime Minister of Burkina Faso in the last 10 days has been in Moscow. And to have them operating on our northern border is particularly distressing for us in Ghana. Apart from not accepting the idea of great powers once again making Africa their theater of operation.
Thank you very much for watching the video. What are your thoughts and opinions? Drop your thoughts, comments and views in the description box below this video. Sister Shanice, out of here for now. One love.